All right. Hey, I'm so happy to be here. Okay. Elaine Marolakos Edelson, and I don't know what Valley Girl accent that was, but welcome to Astrology Mojo. Want to help you get your mojo back. And we are going to be talking about your astrological archetype today. Now, there's a couple of things that I want to talk about first. And that is, as I adjust everything in front of me, and that is, how was your new moon experience? Because it was like I was on speed. I didn't stop zooming and implemented so many new things, found people to help me do different things. And there were some frustrating tech issues, but other than that, it was all good. And like a whirlwind, whirly gig, you know. Now, not everyone had that experience. Oh, hi, Rachel. Not everyone had that experience. I had spoken to some friends and chatted with some clients, and everybody was experiencing something a little bit similar in the spin realm with the new moon in Scorpio, but not so much the same. You know, it's all going to be different. And then, of course, there was the voting and the outcome, and that's its own spin. We're not going to talk about that today, though. We're going to talk about your astrological archetype, which is going to be cool. Oh, just a little note. Next week through December 10th, 2018, you'll be able to see some asteroids if you have a dark sky community. If you've got a lot of lights on or there's a big, city life, you may not be able to see the Taurids. And they pass through the Taurus constellation. But if you're using a telescope and you look at the Taurus constellation, you won't actually see them because they spring out and go that way. So if you want to look in a southeast direction, anytime when it's dark, you pretty much can probably see a few of those asteroids. That's pretty exciting, isn't it? I think so. Okay, so, I have my cards to pull later for folks and just looking at some notes. The archetype is an interesting thing in astrology because even Carl Jung, the Swiss psychiatrist who did a lot of study with archetypes and with astrology, talked about the collective unconsciousness. Now, your astrological archetype literally is it's like your psychological persona and the part of you that you have yet to discover. So it's an exciting thing you can look forward to. Now, the word itself, hi, Jen, and my husband, Dean. The word itself is Greek, and it means prototype or the original model. So an archetype in astrology is like having a planet represent a particular definition. And just as planets govern archetypal behaviors assigned to each astrological sign, again, they don't make things happen to you, but these were the definitions given. Hi, Lori. The definitions given to the planets. And as for an example, Aries and Mars. Mars is the planet that guides Aries, and its archetype would be an innovator or a go-getter or someone more apt to jump or leap before thinking. The hero is the archetype of Aries. But that's in general astrology for the planets. I'm going to be talking about something a little different today. So you too, hi Christine, you too have deeply rooted images and beliefs in your psyche that create your unique perspective, right? It's all of your experiences on this planet in different realms, while you sleep, while you dream, in different lifetimes. And as I said, Swiss psychiatrist Carl Jung postulated that the archetypes were a shared collective unconscious experience. So did Plato, the philosopher Plato. So as an example, again, if you're an Aries or an Aries rising sign, you identify with a fiery spontaneity. And you might want to just leap before you look, Or if you're a Taurus with a Taurus rising sign, which is an earth sign. Aries is a fire sign. You might identify with more beauty and sensuality in your world, or security. These are the archetypes of the planets as they relate to the signs. So, that when a person needs to explore in their life and looking at it through the lens of astrology, when someone needs to explore, they might be exploring the Jupiter Sagittarius archetype. Or if you had the need to nest and create a family, you might be exploring the Cancer archetype, right? Makes sense? So that said, I'm going to be talking about archetypes from a little bit different perspective. And in astrology, when you have a recurring issue, and I want you to think about something that has been happening over and over, and it's like you're so sick of the spin. It's like, oh, not this again. So think about what that might be, and let me know in the comment section too what that issue might be, and your sun sign, and if you know it, your rising sign. And because sidebar, your rising sign is sometimes more powerful when we look at astrology, because it gives clues to everything in your chart, not just your sun sign. All right, so the sun sign might be at odds with the rising sign, or perhaps the rising sign hasn't been explored fully. So when you're looking to resolve something in your life and you just can't seem to, get a handle on it, like, what is this thing? Sometimes it's a great idea to look at your archetype, which it can be called the opposite in astrology, but the opposite of what? Is it the opposite of your sun sign, your rising sign? And again, the sun sign, if you're new to astrology or you're just learning, the planets don't do anything to you, first of all, right? You know that if you've been listening to me the past few months. We live in a cooperation with the cosmos. So when the planets make a move, you feel it. When you make a move, the planets reflect that. So you can look at a definition of what's going on in your life by looking at the blueprint of astrology. It doesn't mean that the planets are doing things or anything to you, but it's a cooperation so that when you're ready for something, that's when it seems to show up in the heavens astrologically and in your life. So it's like a clock. Astrology is like a clock. And that's how I want you to start to look at it, so you don't think that things are controlling you, because it's just not true. All right. So, I made a handy little chart to help you understand. As an example too, if let's say you're a Sagittarius sun sign. So if you want to tell me your issue in the comment section below, Aquarius here, Gemini rising, love relationships, never good. Oh, okay. So then we would look at your archetype as opposite of Aquarius, but then even bigger, it would be Sagittarius, which is opposite of Gemini. So you love relationships, but never good. They don't seem to work out. Then we would also look at the opposite to your Venus, whatever your Venus is in, or perhaps your Mars, so there's a lot of different levels we could explore in astrology. But as an example, you are an Aquarius and your opposite would be Leo. So if you come from a point of view of an Aquarian in a relationship, now do the opposite and start to think like a Leo. Or the opposite of your rising sign. If you come typically from the point of view of a Gemini in your relationship, now do the opposite and explore and do some research. Go to my website, Astrology Mojo. Look at your astrological horoscopes. Read about your sun, rising, and moon sign. Astrologymojo.com. That is my website. And you can get to know your opposite by saying, oh, I would never do that. Gemini rising, Sagittarius, sometimes they'd be at odds, and this is the archetype. And what it represents really is deep down in your psyche, you want to embody this energy, but you don't always want to exemplify it in your life. So you attract it to you, and you will attract your opposite, right? So as an example too, my husband, he's a Cancer sun sign. I'm a Taurus earth and water go together and we work really well together. We get along. His rising sign is Taurus and my rising sign is Capricorn, 2 earth signs. We get along. We have different speeds and tempos, but we get along. Now his moon, Aquarius, my moon, Leo, exact opposites. So, and most of our arguments, right, Dean? Safe to say that most of our arguments have been because of emotional issues or because the not feeling validated, feeling too much information. You know, sometimes I'll look at my husband and go, everything okay? I go, yeah, I'm fine. I said, but that client didn't call you back. Are you disappointed? Yeah, I'm good. I'll just move on, you know. But I'm a Leo moon, so it's like, you know, wait, are you sure? You weren't validated. Let me validate you, because that's what a Leo moon wants. They want to be validated. So then to back away from, you know, when we start to do the head casing and the push in a relationship, I'll say, what would Dean do emotionally? Well, he'd back up, ask once, maybe, okay, you need anything? No. Okay, then I'll walk away. And so it feels weird to do the opposite. Honestly, it really feels weird. So Jen says, oh, that's tricky because I'm an Aries sun and a Libra rising. You're already your own opposite. Not so tricky, though, because if you're in a relationship, you want to move forward, you're much more diplomatic about, you know, what does the other person need? That's really cool. So, but if you know your chart and you want to go further with this, then you can look at the opposite to the cusp of your 5th house, if this is about a relationship, or the cusp of your 8th house, because the opposite of that energy, and the cusp of your house, the 5th house in astrology deals with romance, creativity, problem solving, children. And then the 8th house is sexuality and sensuality. So let's say, you've got, let me say, Libra rising. So that means Aries in the 7th, a Taurus. Okay, so you would look at Scorpio. How would a Scorpio approach the situation? Maybe be a little more laid back, a little more mysterious. You know, so when you go to my website and you look at all the definitions, sun, rising, and moon for all of the planets, I have to clean my glasses. You're going to see what's another way I can be. Literally, it's like I'm working on an astrology masterclass right now, and I'm introducing the planets. And the way I'm doing it is if you were to meet a whole bunch of people at a party. How would they approach you? What would they, Gemini would look at you and say, hey, what's the latest news? You hear the gossip? Or Virgo, so that would be Mercury. So when I introduce the planets, I look at them as people at a party. So you want to do the same thing when you're looking at your archetype in astrology and take note of what is the opposite energy. How can you approach something and do it? Dean says, Astrology Mojo, you got that right, Toots. Yes, we come from opposite sides sometimes emotionally. So when you see my face and the Astrology Mojo link in the comment section, that's actually Dean. He's at the ready, like my producer, to give you links and whatever we're talking about. Okay, so Claudia says, I'm a Cancer ascendant. Okay, but Claudia, what's your sun sign? That's what we want to know. Your rising sign is Cancer, but what's your sun sign? And to look at your archetype, literally, essentially, first you look at the sun sign, then you look at the rising sign, then later, if it's an emotional thing, you look at the moon sign. But it's kind of fun, right? I have a client who is a Sagittarius and a Cancer rising. And when we did this exercise for them to look at, her issue was, women, they don't like me, or I don't get along very well with women. I don't know what it is. Her sisters, her friends, coworkers. And I said, well, all right, let's look at the opposite, Gemini. How would a Gemini approach a feminine relationship? And a little bit lighter, more fun, perhaps not as abrupt. And I said, what's the major complaint, really, that you're getting from these women? And she said, well, it took a while, but we finally got down to it. And it was that she was not sensitive. And I said, oh, how interesting. You're a Cancer rising sign. And Cancer rising sign is someone who is so sensitive that they have to have a barrier between themselves and the world. So they seem very aloof, how odd, but how fitting. And so I said, well, come from the opposite. And that would be a Capricorn energy. So how would a Capricorn person behave with a female friend? And that would be, they seem aloof, but once they get engaged, their ambition is to help you and to serve you no matter what. So, and they're witty, and they don't hold on to perceptions from the outside world as much as a Cancer might. So that helped her greatly. And so she studied up on, she went to my website and she read stuff, and then she Googled stuff online. And she came from the opposite point of view to speak to a few girlfriends. And the first thing that they asked her was, are you okay? Because she was so different and she was behaving so differently. It's like, are you all right? What's going on? And then they figured it out. So Claudia is a Taurus. So your archetype would be Scorpio when approaching a situation that might elude you, or sometimes you just don't know how to get there because you say, well, I think I'm doing all the right things. You go, down your checklist, what's that? So when we look at relationship archetypes, it's a little bit different than you might look at a financial archetype, but you'll get clues, and keep going with it. Does this make sense? Just let me know in the comment section. I'll take a drink. Let me know if it makes sense and if you find it useful, that you can, something you can use. Okay, I got to move that closer. Hey, Casey's here. So this would benefit, I don't know, Casey, if you heard from the beginning, but we're talking about astrological archetypes, and I know that you are an Aries. And sometimes if you want to approach a situation, career situation, or a client or someone, a friend, you might need to, on occasion, come from your archetype, which would be Libra, and to approach them or the situation with a little bit more diplomacy, which I know that you do. And it's not easy sometimes for an Aries, but to come with more diplomacy and then to see the kind of feedback that you get, because you might see, oh, well, this works. And if it doesn't work, then you'd come from your opposite of your rising sign. And for you, that would be Sagittarius. And to see, what would a Sagittarian do? Sometimes I ask myself, of my favorite book authors or actresses or actors even, or my husband, and I'm stuck in a situation, I don't know what it is, I might think, okay, how would this person behave in this situation? What would a professional do in this situation? What would my husband do in this situation when I'm looking at finances or insurance matters or technical things? Like I got an email when Dean was out today, and it was about a booking. And so someone had booked a reading with me, but then they needed to change the appointment. But the email that I got was so unfamiliar. I'd never seen it before. And so Dean said, I looked like I was suffering from some kind of pain. And I was like, what is this? But in my mind, it came out as, oh, I don't know what this is. Can you help me with this? But he said, I looked so stressed. So I thought, all right, I need to come from the opposite. What would be the opposite of Taurus Scorpio? It's like, oh yeah, it's good. We'll figure it out. But I didn't think of that in time. But now I will. Okay. Christine says, I guess my biggest issue might be never choosing the easy way to do anything. So Christine, I don't know. Did I see? I don't always get the comments in the comment section. I don't know why. And then in the replay, I'll see all these comments that I didn't see the first time. I'll say, wait, where did that come from? So Christine, here we go. Sag, Sun, Libra rising. Okay, so the opposite. So when you look at your archetypes, you would look at Gemini or you would look at Aries. And it's always helpful, Jen. Oh, great. Thank you. I'm glad this is helping you. Okay. Never choosing the easy way to do anything. Well, with a Sag, Libra rising, especially the Libra rising, people think that Libra rising signs are so diplomatic, and they are. and that the whole gig is about harmony, and it is. But the way they get there is by putting on their boxing gloves. And it's like, let me tackle that one. I want to be perfect at that. Hey, what did they just do? How come I didn't? Wait a minute. I got to go do that. So you got to be aware of what your sign will do as well. Oh, I've just been notified that there's a new comment. Now I have to scroll down and read it. Thank you. Blame it on Mercury retrograde. No, Mercury gets the worst rap, I'm telling you. Okay, and we're going to be talking about that as well on Monday because we are now so close to the Mercury in retrograde that, ta-da, you are going to be feeling and it's a Mercury retrograde in Sagittarius. So talk about an archetype. And why I said that is because Mercury is guided by the planet. Mercury guides the sign of Gemini and Virgo. And they have very distinct ways of doing things, even though they're both mercurial, where Gemini is more about the information and the data and the networking. Virgo is more about the design and the healing of something or the purpose to something. So now in Sagittarius, opposite Gemini, it's going to be very interesting when people are going to, no matter what your sign or rising sign, this applies to any Mercury in retrograde. You want to check your facts and then not become outraged when your facts don't match the other facts. Other things that you glean in the news or things that you hear or things that you assumed. Or don't assume that, what is that? When you assume you make an ass out of you and me. It's so true, especially in a retrograde. And I love retrogrades because I'll flow through time in a way that I typically don't, or I will experience it depends on the sign that it's in. And because my astrological clock might tell me, oh, it's time for you to revisit. And this is what a Mercury in retrograde is great for. You revisit, you renew, you renegotiate, you release. And then you're done. But the past will come back. And because we are also in the Venus retrograde as well, I am still up through Monday. There's still room for you to book your 30-minute retrograde reading with me. Dean will post a link. If you don't see it on my website, on the Facebook page, the Book Now button, Dean will post a link to that. And we're going to cover, it's not just for this retrograde. It's going to last up to 2 years because I'm going to look at where you sabotage yourself when it comes to your feminine energy, finances, being stubborn, relationships, and your thought process. Excuse me, a little dry. Okay. So the archetypes are so fun to look at because when you actually role play an archetype, and I recommend this anytime couples have come to me for any kind of intuitive counseling, I would say, all right, I want you to apply this if you need to or want to or can. Apply this to a friend, a lover, a family member, and if they are willing to work with you, this is so fun. What you need to do is sit opposite them, explain to them the whole process, and you sit opposite them and at a table, and you set a timer, and for 2 minutes, you imitate them, but not in a condescending way. So as they're imitating you, you're imitating them, and you're assuming you're in their shoes, essentially, for a couple of minutes. And where they might say, okay, here's the issue. I wanted to have pasta. And then you start thinking, what would they say? And you start to emulate them. And as you role play each other's position on eating pasta, it's kind of funny what comes out. And then you stop after the timer goes off and you say, is that really me? Do I really do that? And, or at a restaurant, you may spend hours looking at the menu saying, yeah, I want this. No, I want that. And then you finally get to the last thing. And then the waitress comes by And it's your turn. Everybody else has ordered and you order, and then 5 minutes later you change your order. So if you do something like that, you can emulate that behavior with someone or do the opposite. And it almost feels like there's something in you that doesn't fit and it wants to push it out or stretch it. But when I do the opposite, and especially emotionally, when my husband will come from his Aquarian moon point of view and I'll come from my Leo moon point of view. And I think an Aquarian moon, essentially looks like a computer or a Vulcan. And and a Leo moon looks like someone who has lost her stuff and her hair is out to here. And she has a microphone and she needs to tell you exactly what's happening every second until it gets resolved. And don't you dare get defensive with me. So there's a whole different, dynamic that takes place. So I want you to explore this. This is so fun to do. When you look at the opposite of what you can do and who you can be, it can be fun. Unless you're in a very deeply committed relationship that's going sour and things are not feeling good and the other person is not a participant, then that makes it harder. But I still want you to embody the opposite, your archetype. So, and here's a cool little archetype graph that I made for you. So in case you don't know, the opposite of Aries is Libra. The opposite of Taurus is Scorpio. The opposite of Gemini is Sagittarius. Ta-da! The opposite of Cancer is Capricorn. Opposite of Leo is Aquarius. Opposite of Virgo is Pisces. So you mix and match like granimals. Mix and match these signs and the definitions and the energies that go with these signs, because it's really going to help you to get a different perspective and to tap into that unconscious self that holds so much information. Let me tell you, this is not your first go around on this planet. You are not a newbie. You're not the last kid, like the new kid on the block. So when you tap into the opposite of who you are, what happens is you tap into past lives when you were this energy. And it feels odd, different, like clothes that don't fit, but yet are comfortable and familiar. And then you start thinking, wow, I think I could do this. So it's really helpful to sit back every once in a while and think, well, if every time this happens, this is my response or reaction, then every time this happens next time, do the opposite. What would your opposite archetype do in this situation? How would you handle it? See what happens and then come back and tell me your whole experience. And I'm going to pull a card for the group. Hope this is, why do I love Mercury in retrograde? It's always good for me. Casey loves Mercury in retrograde. So do I. And I'll tell you, Casey has a Gemini rising sign. So when Mercury goes retrograde, she gives herself permission to play more and to not feel restricted or opinionated to the point of restriction. Was that redundant? I don't know. So we're going to talk more about Mercury in retrograde on Monday, but remember to book your session by Monday, and you can always schedule it later for the month in November or early December or whenever you want. But to get it at this great rate, it's a 30-minute reading. It's a retrograde reading. Now I'm going to pull a card for everyone focused on their archetype and perhaps another energy that might help everyone. Okay, here we go. Oh, this one's jumping out at me big time. Ooh, this is fun. Vibration. So, and that's exactly what we're talking about. So when you carry a specific vibration in your approach to anything, it's going to be helpful for you to look at the opposite way of then approaching it and just play, experiment. Go to a store where nobody knows you or a post office in the next town and just do the opposite. First find out what your archetype is, to your sign. Let me put this chart up again so you can take note. So if you're an Aries sun or rising sign, your opposite would be Libra. If you're a Taurus sun or rising sign, your opposite would be Scorpio. Gemini sun or rising, opposite is Sag. Cancer sun or rising, opposite Capricorn. Leo sun or rising, opposite Aquarius. And again, Virgo sun or rising, opposite Pisces. And then go and experiment, especially in a retrograde when all the defenses come down and your inhibitions open up and just fall away, and you have to filter. We're going to talk about that on Monday. Watch your filter, because sometimes people blab and they're not supposed to, and you hear things did I just say that? I didn't mean to. Please erase it. Cancel. Sometimes, it's like, will the jury please disregard that last statement? Not going to happen. It's out there. It's out there unless the jury has amnesia, collective amnesia. Carl Jung, what do you say about that? What archetype is amnesia? I don't know. Full awareness. Too much information. That would be TMI. All right, folks. Thank you for coming here. Thank you for participating. I hope this helps you. Please give it a try. Please do. No, not... What does Yoda say? I forget what Yoda says, but I remember in the back of my head. It was, don't try, just do. Just go do it and come back and report. All right, I'll be back on Monday. Have a beautiful weekend. Be sparkly. Thank you.